Hello, unsatisfactory. Those are the comments that we're hearing from your colleagues in the House over this report. What is your take?
Thank you, Jackie, for the invitation. This is a weighty matter. It's a weighty because it can be looked at the two tangents prism. Number one is that the health correctness of this sugar. When the Minister for Interior, Honorable Fred Matiang'i, came out and said that preliminary investigations had revealed mercury contents in some consignment of sugar brought within the country, then that drew the attention of the Samburu West Member of Parliament, Leisuda Leisimula, who then brought it to the attention of the Speaker. And by the wisdom of the Speaker, he mandated two different committees to look in depth into the issues underlying the health correctness of the sugar. Now, the Committee of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, chaired by Honorable Kanini Kega, together with that of Agriculture, chaired by Honorable Ali Aden, were given the task to look into this matter and comprehensively appraise the nation about this, because this is touching on health, especially at a time when we have had an upsurge of cancer-related illnesses within the country and beyond. So this was a very, very serious issue. Of course, the second tangent touches on trade, but I will come to that a little later. Now, I was privileged to appear in part of these committee proceedings. And interestingly, this was coming at a time when just a day prior, we had a swipe and a very harsh indictment by the Speaker of the National Assembly on the conduct of certain committee members and certain chairmen of various committees. The degree at which proceedings are handled and witnesses are handled. You heard about certain committee members hugging witnesses before them and belittling themselves and uplifting the levels of a witness who has come to answer very germane and fundamental issues touching on the health of the people of Kenya. So the conduct of the entire proceedings were not satisfactory. The question was very simple. Do we have mercury contents into the sugar that had been brought in Kenya? That was the question that this committee ought to have come up with. Very, very important answers to the people of Kenya. Now then they turned it around and said, firstly, that further tests are being carried out on the mercury. But we have a report about lead, about copper, and about moisture content. Now, what you can quickly see from the entire, the entire thing is that somebody was looking at the low-hanging fruits. Issues that perhaps Kenyans will not make the loudest of noises. Because if Kenyans would know with certainty today that the sugar that they have consumed and are continuing to consume have mercury content, then the uproar that will accompany all that statement will be too big for the government to bear. So, in retrospect, therefore, the Ministry of Health, through the Principal Secretary, Mr. Toom, who actually appeared before us, turned it around and said, we are still investigating mercury, but we have results that the moisture content, 60% of that consignment has moisture content beyond what is recommended. I mean, what is about moisture? We can consume moisture as much as we want. But if you tell us what really triggered the investigation, which was the mercury content, that is what Kenyans wanted to know.
Indeed.
That is why you have realized that there was a lot of, brouhaha, a lot of Mickey Mouse games, a lot of noises coming from the members of Parliament yesterday, because we were not satisfied by the findings of that committee. And the Speaker, in his wisdom, chose to take the matter back to that committee and told them Kenyans would want to see a better oversight role by these various committees. Committees are establishments of law. If you read our constitution in Article 124, it behoves Parliament to come up with various committees that play oversight role on behalf of the members of this country, of the citizenry. Then if you also look at our constitution, paying credence to Article 95, sub-article 2, it says that the work of Parliament is to safeguard or provide safety to the people of Kenya. So by delving into this most fundamental issue is actually playing the constitutional duty of protecting the lives of the citizenry. And you know, committees don't just sit for free. There are lots of costs that go with it. I mean, people are paid allowances, the logistics have to be catered for, and many other things. And this committee has been sitting for the last 10 days and coming up with a report that, as the majority leader, Aden Duale, did allude, cannot even pass in any assembly, county assembly, I mean, much less a national assembly. So if this is the kind of report that Kenyans would be treated to, emanating from the National Assembly, then Kenyans are going to have no faith on our conduct as the legislators. Under Article 1, sub-article 2, Kenyans have given us the mandate to represent their interest. They are exercising that sovereignty through their duly elected leaders. And if that sovereignty has been donated to us, and we carry out absolute usurpation of that particular constitutional limbo, then we are lost.
And that really is the question, because you know, this 11-paged report, what many critics are arguing is that it served to lessen the confidence that the public therefore has in, you know, their own representatives. Even if the speaker now has taken it back, don't you have concerns that now the public will not be as expectant of answers on a question that is affecting you and I? I mean, we have cups in front of us. We don't know whether the sugar we're consuming in our coffee this morning has mercury or not, and that's really what Kenyans want to know.
Yeah, it is a germane matter. It is so mundane that Kenyans have tasked members of Parliament, because you know, Kenyans know, because it came from a very high person in government. An interior cabinet minister, even in terms of hierarchy or hierarchical order, is not a small person. But then when he comes out with this, and that is why Honorable Mbadi was very right to say that they ought to have even summoned Honorable Matiang'i to come before that committee, and then he can direct them to where this mercury laced sugar is kept at, because he should know as the one in charge of our security. And you know, he doesn't just come out to speak for the sake of it. He must have had a cogent explanation on the content of mercury in this sugar. So, as you say, yes, the back has been taken back to the to this committee to do some better job as opposed to what they have done. But you know, Kenyans already lack faith. If at a preliminary stage you have bungled the process, then Kenyans are asking, why then take it back to the same committee that has not convinced Kenyans beyond any reasonable doubt that the task they were given to carry out or to execute is not in tandem with their expectation? So that in itself throws a lot of questions on this particular committee. Now, the committee ought to have, you know, even asked for more time. I was trying to Google the processes that a person has to undergo in order to carry out a mercury test. There are certain machines which I hope KEBS does have, or the government laboratory does have, that would do an immediate result, would produce immediate result on the mercury content. And you ask yourself, 10 days that Kenyans gave this committee this job to do on their behalf, and they are saying that analysis of mercury is still ongoing. Are they therefore saying that because 60%, as they have said, has moisture content that is not fit for human consumption, 60%? And my question is, if 60 has moisture content, how many, what percentage therefore could be having mercury? Because it could be that 40% has mercury, 60% has extra moisture content. Therefore, we are saying that Kenya is being treated to sugar that is not healthy, that is not fit for their consumption. So are they therefore saying that we need to stop consumption of sugar until this complete analysis has been done? That is one. Number two, they said from that report that only 18 counties out of 47 had this analysis carried out, and they are therefore portioning blame to the importers, who have also remained faceless to this very day. I mean, if you have a batch of sugar, for instance, that batch ought to lead you to the importer. It will lead you to the bill of lading. It will lead you to the delivery note and to the invoice. All that data can be traced from the batches. But they are saying that there is sugar in the market. They are not telling us that that sugar is what was produced in the country or contraband that has been imported by these scrupulous business people that have created all this disharmony and discord within the sugar sector. They are not telling us that. But what we know is that these crooks have made it possible for all public-owned sugar companies to die. As we speak, Mumias is at the deathbed. Muhoroni closed a fortnight ago. Chemelil Sugar closed 3 weeks ago. No public sugar company is operating. Apart from, you know, Sony Sugar, that is reeling on its knees. But then the private individuals, privately owned sugar mills, are producing sugar every day. So you ask yourself, are they producing sugar that they have imported for repackaging? Or they all of a sudden have the capacity over and above what the public sugar millers can do, and now they're providing sugar to the country? The genesis of COMESA as regards sugar was to take care of what the country, or to take care of the deficit that the country could not produce. Kenya was producing 600 metric tons of sugar, 600 metric tons. And what the country was consuming every month was 800. So the 200 was to be the deficit that was to be imported from the COMESA countries. To date, all these companies have died, but there are available amount of sugar in the market. And you know, COMESA had a reprieve that, you know, taxes were zero rated. So you don't pay taxes, you import cheap sugar to augment the country's needs. So we are asking, are these private-owned sugar companies taking a full advantage and abusing the COMESA tariffs by bringing in more sugar to kill the existing public companies so that they can hence benefit to the detriment of the welfare of every Kenyan? So, and we expected this committee to have gone beyond just looking at the health correctness, but also look at the trade element, because that is key. It is upon the trade element that all the companies that many Kenyans have been relying on for decades on end have died. So you can imagine how many people are now jobless as a result of deaths of this company. Those benefiting directly as employees or as business people, and those benefiting indirectly as perhaps third-hand beneficial group. So, you know, it's a total discord. And if the people who are mandated with the duty to safeguard the interest of Kenya, because we are not working for COMESA, we are not working for Malawi, we are not working for Brazil, we are not working for Malaysia or Cuba or any other country that has excess sugar and must dump it here in Kenya using these crooks who bring it in the country. We are duty-bound with a cardinal responsibility to protect lives of the people of Kenya. The lives of people of Kenya come first. Businessmen, you know, let them make their money, but it has to be, you know, duly done, not usurping any procedure to, you know, benefit. Kenyans have already accepted that they're going to consume this sugar. okay? They have accepted, and we have been doing that even when these factories are dying. But even to add more salt to the injury, they are lacing it with toxic chemicals. I mean, how far can we be pushed as a country? What we are saying, therefore, is that the government must come out strongly and protect the lives of every individual Kenyan. Members of parliament who are actually in government, because government has three arms. You know, the executive, which has President Uhuru Kenyatta and President Raila Odinga and their cabinet. Then you have the legislator or the legislators, where I play my cardinal responsibility. Then we also have the judiciary, which therefore, you know, midwives the judicial processes. So as part of the government, we must support each other with the people of Kenya's interest in mind. Any will to torpedo this kind of view is a betrayal to the people of this great country. And we will never be forgiven by the Kenyans.
All right. There were concerns during this process in those 10 days that there was interference. And, you know, these people that you're saying have not been unmasked, as it were. Do you believe there was interference as the process was going on?
Well, there is no cogent evidence that has been provided, or one that is alluding to the fact that there was undue influence on the report. But you know, you don't necessarily have to be provided with real evidence in order to come up with your own findings about the conduct of any proceeding. Now, one thing that came out quite clearly is that when certain witnesses were called to give their views over this sugar saga, they were seen hugging members of parliament. They were seen, you know, a very cordial chit-chat that does not qualify for a witness statement. If you go to a court of law, you can see how judges handle witnesses. You can see how judges handle cases. Even the lawyers who are actually court officials cannot have kind of a rapport with a judge when a matter is before a judge. So it begins there. And that is why most of our judges lately have had very good reasoning of their judgments, and hence distributing justice where it is needed. I mean, you read the body and the conclusion of our judges, it is well reasoned. And that is what Kenyans expect of any investigative organ. You must treat suspects as such. You don't start from the very end with the resultant feature of any investigation. You begin by treating them as suspects. You don't hug them, you don't create chit-chat, you don't belittle yourself when you're before a suspect, because you are not doing it for yourself, you're doing it for the people of Kenya. We have had questions surrounding health of the sugar that has been brought into the country, and therefore we've been tasked with a duty to, you know, re-examine the conduct of all this kind of trade. So Kenyans do not expect us to start hugging and chit-chat and rapport with people who should actually be termed witnesses into this saga. So then, if having done all that we saw, and then coming up with such a hollow report that cannot qualify for anything, you know, Kenyans then add 1 + 1. But as I said, there is no evidence that has been adduced before us or before any investigative body that would have a connotation of an undue influence on what has been happening. So there could be elements, but because there is no evidence, we will treat it as just, you know, not having the capacity to fully conduct an investigation and give recommendations.
All right. Swanex from Nairobi says, I think the president is supposed to appoint a commission of inquiry to look into this serious and fundamental issue of sugar, which is unfit to Kenyans' health. This is because MPs who are investigating don't care about the employer, who are Kenyans. I wonder if all of us die because individuals' self-interest, who then will vote for them? Komen says parliamentary committee proceedings are sometimes baffling, and the findings indeed reflect the process. In fact, a primary school class is more sober than some of these meetings. This is a waste of our resources, and MPs should be ashamed of this. This is feedback from the very public that legislators are meant to be serving.
Well, you know, the problem that I have with commissions of inquiry, and we have had a series of them before, firstly, is the open-endedness of the investigations. No commission of inquiry has been given a time frame upon which to deliberate and present its report. They can take forever, yet Kenyans need an immediate answer. What we are proposing is, and this does not touch on a sub judice rule, we have had matters pending before court and very alive as so, but at the same time, members of parliament or members of the Senate still carrying out the investigations. We've seen it with the NYS saga and many other scandals that have come to the fore. So nothing stops EACC and DPP carrying out their duties and arraigning these suspects before a court of law. But as somebody said, they could be, you know, sitting at the top echelons of government, that sometimes they become very difficult to be apprehended and to answer to these charges in a court of law. But my friend who has written to you is very right to say that the Kenyans are the employers. They are employers of the president, they are employers of the clerk that works as a state officer. So the employer comes first. And that is why in business they would say that the customer is always right, even when they are not, because they are the employers. So if we can have people sitting at top echelons of government and their cronies out there and their surrogates who would then torpedo the constitution and enabling acts for their own selfish aggrandizement to the detriment of Kenyans, then we are definitely losing the mark. What I do not buy is a theory that has become a common adage that 5 years is a very short period of time, such that Kenyans become so powerless and so helpless that the only remedial measure that they have is to cast their vote and send you home. But that is after 5 years. After 5 years, if indeed mercury is existing in our sugar, then you can imagine the amount of damage that can be caused by this sugar after 5 years. So let us not wait for 5 years to take these people home. Let us correct the ills now. It doesn't matter. Some of these people come into these elective positions and make their trillions, such that even if they're voted out, they will be in a position to survive forever, including their great-grandkids and many other generations to come. That is not how to look at the welfare of a nation. The welfare of a nation cannot be decided by a few cliques who are so rich and so powerful, yet a bigger bulk of people are suffering out there. That is not the best way to look at a nation. When people decide to make wealth, and you know, creation of wealth does not only happen in a capital city. Mama Mboga deep down in Otho Market in Ahero, in Nyando constituency, by selling her wares, selling what she has, her groceries, and getting money, and paying her taxes, both to the county government and the national government, that person is creating wealth from the ground, deep down there. And that is why an enabling environment for business to thrive must be created to all. We are not going to pay credence to the few who sit in major urban centers such as Nairobi, Kisumu, and Mombasa, and Eldoret, that those are the people who create wealth to a country. They don't create wealth. They actually steal wealth from the innocent Kenyans. As I said, we've got so many of our factories that have died, and these factories employed so many people. We have the plight of our farmers who are now lost into this. Some of them are uprooting their sugarcane and replacing with it with other crops. Livelihoods have been held for a long period of time by this kind of sugarcane sector. So anything that therefore destroys that sugar sector destroys lives of so many Kenyans. The government must take a decisive step by apprehending all the crooks that have disorganized our sugar sector. Those who have, killed our factories, those who have imported over and above what COMESA is recommending, together those who've imported sugar that is unhealthy.